Welcome, guys, ghouls, girls, and everything in between. I am Noah, and I conjured here Stephan.
Hello. Good to see you. Good to see everyone, sort of.
Yeah, so Stephan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We did see, before we get into anything else, we saw Brit's final fate, and our girl was redeemed.
She was indeed. Thank you, audience, for redeeming her.
Thank you so much, audience. This was a really beautiful scene. I loved seeing everybody clap for our girl just before our finger friend showed up to collect. I see Mr. P Slosh says Layla looks different. My spells don't always work exactly how you plan. But anyway, let's get right to it. We're gonna talk a lot more about Brit's final fate that we got to see tonight. We're gonna talk more about it on Monday, but since we have the wonderful Stephan here, I'm going to get Stephan, in case anybody doesn't know, can you briefly tell everybody your role here in Silent Hill Ascension?
Of course. I'm GenVid's Chief Creative Officer, and I was the supervising creative director on the project. I helped us pitch it to Konami, came up with the original concept, pitched it, and got it approved, and then, helped lead the team to here we are.
Thank you so much, Stephan. Still, people don't believe me that this is not just a hobby. And really appreciate that. Thank you so much. So let's get right to it. I am here conjuring the spirits of our audience, and I'm going to conjure question number 1 from Foxo der Fuchs. They are asking, in what way will the events of Silent Hill Ascension be canon on Silent Hill?
Yeah, absolutely. So Silent Hill Ascension is entirely a Silent Hill canon story. It's part of Konami expanding the Silent Hill universe, as they've done with every one of the Silent Hill games and movies. Although the interactive core is the canonical path for the Silent Hill universe. Everything in Silent Hill Ascension is canon, which means that it's part of the universe, and who knows what Konami may or may not do with it in the future.
Yes, we don't know. Keep an eye out. Thank you so much, Stephan. Second question from Dermopster. Did you take any major inspiration from the earlier Silent Hill games?
Yes, absolutely. So we deliberately did not do direct tie-ins to the earlier Silent Hill games. We didn't have characters from the games appear in the experience in the show, but obviously it's part of the Silent Hill universe. We're drawing upon the same themes that Konami's been working with since Silent Hill 1. All of the boundaries of the lore, the things that can and can't happen in a Silent Hill story, comes directly from all of the work that Konami has done over many years to establish what a core Silent Hill story is. And in terms of the kind of storytelling that we were interested in doing, obviously we're big fans of Silent Hill 2. And I also happen to be a big fan of the work that Sam Barlow did on the franchise and played through those 2 games as well. But really, we played all of the previous Silent Hill games, looked at what they were doing with the evolution of the universe over the decades, and found a space where we could bring something new to the Silent Hill universe with what we're doing with the idea of multiple simultaneous protagonists and locations and main monsters, while at the same time honoring a lot of the ideas and obviously sticking to the rules of the Silent Hill universe that were established by Konami over the previous decades.
Right. So it sounds like you had to do a lot of very hard work playing all the Silent Hill games, and God bless you for your bravery. Um, but now I have a question just for community, because we did see Rachel not succeed in the monster chase. What do the endure scenes represent?
So I like to allow the audience to have interpretation and debates among themselves about exactly what things mean. But obviously, the endure scenes don't cause the character to die in the show, in the main story. So what failure of an endure scene means clearly is not the kind of death that the audience is able to drive a character towards through story decisions. And so their story fate are their canonical fates. What happens in the endure scenes are part of their journey, and obviously it's tied to their hope going up and down, and what they're experiencing in those endure scenes is impacting their survivability in the long term. But failing a single endure scene is obviously not kicking them out of the story. So
Right, and gratefully so, because there's a lot still to unravel with Rachel here. So Taria88 asked, was the Howgrid story written before the audience commented about it, or did it happen thanks to our headcanon?
Well, the Howgrid story was part of the story all along, but it happened in the way that it happened, and it went in the direction that it went because of your input. So we were all on the same wavelength about where it might go, obviously, because your headcanon aligned with what ultimately happened.
Yeah,
but definitely, like, those possibilities existed as a fundamental part of the story.
Right. And also, maybe we incepted it into your brains. I don't know. Maybe it happens. Sometimes by accident I do that. Andres Rodriguez asked, what's the significance of the seal of Metatron being in the collector's belt?
So I'm not going to confirm or deny that it is definitely the seal of Metatron, but I will say that when we were developing Silent Hill Ascension, we came up with a lot of deep lore about Radcliffe and the Foundation and its offshoots and heretics and Messiah and so on, going back hundreds and even thousands of years, and what those sort of different strains of belief that had led to the existence of the Foundation in our story in contemporary times really mean. And so all of that deep lore that we developed to give ourselves this underpinning for what exactly it is that Rachel and Eric and Xavier and Krista and so on have gotten themselves into by being part of the Foundation, and how that causes them to react to what's going on when they start seeing monsters and children start disappearing and so on. We added symbolism hidden in various places throughout the experience that draw upon that deep lore that we developed, and how the ideas of the Foundation play out over the history of our world, like our window on the human world through the Silent Hill storyline, for a long time. And then sort of we dabbed in little bits of symbolism to sort of hint at that. And that is, the collector is full of symbolism.
Yeah, I don't understand all this idolater speak of symbolism and enchantment. Not for me. But Magic Marmot asked, this one is gonna be tricky. Orson versus Faith.
Well, I can't choose because they're both my children in more way than one. Not only did I create them with the team and the writers and so on, but they are voice acted by my actual children. So.
Right. Okay. So that leads me to a question from our very own Jacob, who asks, he asks, how do your kids like being voice actors? Have they watched themselves in the series? Do they see any of the fan comments?
So they absolutely loved being voice actors. They both had a really great time in the vocal booth with our voice director and voice team. Really, really enjoyed it. They both are fans of horror in general. And, you know,
surprise, surprise.
They're young, right? They're 8 and 12. So the kind of horror they like right now is stuff like Five Nights at Freddy's, and that sort of thing. But they've really enjoyed being voice actors. They really got into their characters. They had opinions about the backstory and lore of their characters, which I was impressed for their being 8 and 12. They really sort of opined about why Faith was this way and why Orson was that way. And they have watched themselves in the series. They certainly find it interesting to hear their voices coming from characters, and they definitely like relate to these characters as being kind of connected to them, which means that the scary parts of Orson and Faith's stories affect them. Zane, the 8-year-old, had to stop watching after a while because it was becoming too intense for him. But they did enjoy it, and they do see some of the fan comments. I share particularly the comments that people post about enjoying their acting and enjoying the show, and they feel really proud to have been a part of helping scare you all and make you think and enjoy this experience. So.
They did an amazing job. I really legit, I'm a fan. I can't wait to see what those rascals are going to be up to later on in their careers. Now that I know that you trained them in the Stanislavski method. So anyway, Mike Knight OTW is asking, are we getting to resurrect Toby for one episode with Eric?
Well, depending on the choices that you all collectively make, all sorts of things could potentially happen as we head towards our exciting finales.
Yeah, the conclusion of the canon, and we'll see if the canon can or canon can't. Forest Shroud is asking, I'm still wondering about Zane, not the kid, the character, the man in the fog. Do you think he's a future protagonist cameo for another game or story?
So, not a coincidence that Zane is named Zane. He is in fact named after my son. Yes, I'm glad that people are wondering about Zane. That is actually a very important character to the Ascension universe, or portion of the Silent Hill universe. And though you do not spend a lot of time with him, he is actually an integral player in this entire story. And what might happen in the future, like the saying says, the only thing you can't predict is the future. But there definitely is a lot going on with Zane, and there could be more to find out about what exactly is happening with that guy in the future.
Right, but when you say you can't predict the future, speak for yourself, man. I can conjure it up. But Leonardo S5 asked, are there any voice actors you'd like to work with again for your next projects?
Well, I certainly intend to work with my children again for future projects whenever possible. They're fun to work with. They bring a lot of joy and energy into the vocal booth. But yeah, for sure. I mean, look, I think the entire voice cast really did put in a lot of hard work and did a very credible job of putting together what's a very difficult project. Tiffany Villalobos, who played Haugen, I have worked with before and would be happy to work with again. Michael Urso, who played Toby, I think a lot of people, including ourselves, loved him. Trude, who played Astrid, Ian, who played Eric, Wilma, who played Rachel, Katie, who played Joy. I think, they kind of went the extra mile. They engaged with the fandom. They did a great job with their characters. So yeah, I think for the right role, I think the voice cast would definitely be folks that we would talk to again.
Everybody's hired. Just kidding. We'll see. So people are asking some questions about the What If season. That's coming from various people. So basically, are we going to see more scenes of the series?
Yeah, so the idea behind the What If season is what you just saw over the weeks that have gone past since Halloween. It's going to start all over again from where we are at the beginning on Halloween of last year. And the story is going to progress through again, except this time, many of the decisions that were made canonically will not be available. And you'll have an opportunity to see what would have happened if some other choices had been made.
I love that. We get a little peek into the other side again, because in real life, we can't really see what would happen. So this is pretty cool that we get to see what if. I see that Hector also asked, the series is almost over?
So the arc that you've been enjoying since Halloween is almost over. And what may or may not happen in the future with Silent Hill, Miles, with Silent Hill interactive streaming series remains to be determined. Like I said, the only thing you can't predict is the future. But in the meanwhile, we have announced other GenVid projects. We have our DC Justice League project, DC Heroes United, coming out. And we also announced that we're working on Borderlands Echo Vision Live. So we have other socially interactive streaming series / Miles in the pipeworks. And where we're going to go beyond that, we'll see. It's definitely been a lot of fun watching the audience enjoy our work. And, right now we're focused on Justice League, and we'll see where things go from there.
Right. So I have a couple more questions here. I see Skinny Tie asked, Silent Hill Ascension has a very real focus on inclusion and diversity, which is new for the Silent Hill franchise. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, absolutely. GenVid as a company has always, since I started working with them, had a focus on inclusion. The fact that our experiences are streaming video over the network with a light overlay on top for interactivity is deliberate. It allows people all over the world to enjoy our experiences. People in places like India or the Philippines, Malaysia, that might not necessarily be able to play one of the core games in the franchises that we've worked with and are working with, Silent Hill, Borderlands, the Walking Dead games, can engage. And so we've always looked at being inclusive in our characters, because we're trying to represent the world that we live in and make it welcoming to people all over the world. So yeah, it's definitely something that we look at doing deliberately and try to make something that can be that has characters that many people around the world are able to relate to, and not just one specific demographic.
Right, and that's really nice that you can relate, because sometimes I watch like exorcism movies, and I find it silly sometimes, because they're talking about my peoples, the demons and such. Secunda Vita asked, would Hagrid be the first open gay couple in Silent Hill lore?
I think the answer is yes. I mean, that's really a question for Konami, but when all this stuff that I played through and watched as research for working on this project, I did not encounter anyone else.
Okay, there's a first, but not last, maybe. We would see. So, final audience question for tonight, because I feel like I'm exhausting our darling Stephan. Thank you so much for being here for us. Mr. P. Slosh asks, Silent Hill historically takes inspiration from many classic works. What literary inspirations did Ascension have?
Oh, well, that's a good question. Obviously, because we are in the Silent Hill universe, we're drawing on a lot of the same inspirations that they used in creating the foundational lore. I will say that one of the writers that worked on the project with us for a long time was a writer named Richard Kadri, who has a series of novels called Sandman Slim, and I was personally inspired. Richard was one of my very first bosses decades ago, and then we got to switch. And I was inspired the way that Richard looks at classical lore and remixes it in how we approached building the lore for Silent Hill Ascension. And that meant looking at a lot of works of classical, not necessarily literature, but esoterica, looking at things like the works of people like Aleister Crowley and Anton LaVey.
Don't bring up my family.
The source works that they would go to, things like Arts Goetia and stuff like that. Like, we really looked at sort of the history of occultism and demonology, and how that intersects with religion and psychology. Jung, stuff like that. So yeah, I mean, some pop contemporary influences, some ancient and middle contemporary influences, yeah, that's we definitely looked a lot at occult works, both practitioner works and fictional works.
Well, amazing. Thank you so much, Stephan, for answering all these questions. Thank you so much, audience, for asking those questions. We are nearing the end here, but as you know, the end might not be final for some. Some of us might resurrect again. But really, thank you so much, Stephan. Thank you, audience. Great questions, great answers. Let's recap a little bit before we close off here. So we had Brit's final fate. She was redeemed. Thank you, audience. I needed to see that for my soul. Sometimes I find it, even though I sold it, but sometimes I can still get in touch with it. Anyway, stick around Monday. We have also Eric's final fate coming up. Don't want to miss it. Tune in next week as well. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Thank you so much, Stephan, for your time. Production, can you please show the next show graphic before we wrap up? Thank you. So we have our next pre-show at 5:40 p.m. Pacific time on Monday. We have those on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Then we have the show at 6 p.m. Pacific time on weekdays, and the post-show right after on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Now, Stephan, thank you again so much. Any parting words?
Thank you for having me. Thank you to the audience for enjoying, engaging, and leading our characters to some good and some bad fates. And we are very appreciative of the audience. We do it for you, and thanks for tuning in.
Thank you so much, everybody. So I hope you have a very spooky, ghostly weekend, and I will see you next week.